Want to welcome each and every one of you here in our Olive Tree Fellowship Teaching Center, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Want to also welcome those of you that are coming in through our Torah Unleashed YouTube channel, coming in from different parts of the United States and the world. And we've gotten several people that have called or have contacted us from Africa, several from Uganda and a couple other places. So we want to just say hello to those of you that are coming in from other parts of the world. Thank you for that. Now, today we are going to do what we call a double parashot, a double parsha. We are finishing up with Parsha Lech-Lecha. So I believe we're on part 4 on that. And then we're beginning our fourth parasha, Vayera. And of course, Lech-Lecha means go forth yourself. And Vayera is, and he appeared. So we're going to finish up from what we were doing last week, finishing up our study last week, and starting a new parasha so that we could really start seeing what Adonai is doing in the life of Abraham. Now, we're going to be finishing up with Abraham next week and start with Isaac and Yaakov and getting into Shmot, the book of Exodus. And we'll probably be in Exodus right by the time that we are going to be getting ready for Pesach. And so even right now at the end of February and definitely in March, we're going to start teaching and going on Wednesday nights looking at how to do a Passover. And so I'm already starting to get everybody to start thinking Passover is coming. Passover, the beginning of the year is coming. And the year begins biblically right after the spring equinox. The first crescent moon on the western horizon after the equinox is the first day of the biblical year, the new year, the Rosh Hashanah. And so we're going to start getting ready for that. And so start thinking even right now about Passover. Passover's coming. Let's get excited about the Passover that's coming. Well, let's get into our study today and go with me to Genesis 16:1. Genesis 16:1. And we're going to talk a little bit about Hagar, as she is mentioned as in English, Hagar, and the birth of Ishmael. Now, it's important that we do this study because part of what's going on in the world today has to do with all the other descendants of Abraham. Now, Ishmael was not his only descendant. And Isaac, who is the father of the Jewish people. And we also have him having sons through a third wife called Keturah. And then his nephew Lot, also we're going to see, had other children by his two daughters. And all these people are a conglomerate of Ishmaelites and Keturahites and all these Ammonites, Moabites, and all these people make up what today has been called the Arab peoples, or some of these people that have become into Islam, and all the situations that are going on, especially with Israel today. And so it has to do with much of it with Hagar. And these are lessons that we need to learn because of the failure of both Sarai and Abram to really trust Adonai. It is hard to trust Adonai. Adonai gives us his promises. How many times has he promised us different things? And we have been believers for years, even with us who have the Ruach, the Holy Spirit. And many times we stop believing. Sometimes we doubt. We have fear. We have worries. We try to help Elohim out. We can't help him out. We cannot, manipulate. We cannot get our manos manipulate into situations and try to work things out. We have to trust him. Let's go to 16:1. Abraham's wife Sarai, remember her name was Sarai, had borne him no child. Adonai says, you're going to have a child several times, and tells Abraham, you're going to have a son. But 25 years have passed. What happened? No child, no son. But she had an Egyptian slave girl called Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, listen now. Shema. Listen up. And this is in intensive form. Listen up. Listen now. Since Yahweh has kept me from having children. Yes, Yahweh has kept her from having children. Why? Because Adonai doesn't want this to be a natural situation. He wants it to be a supernatural situation. See, Adonai wants to receive glory for what he does for us. It's not just something that happens like normal life. And yes, but Adonai has a plan. Sometimes Yahweh does not answer our prayers. He promises, and sometimes we pray, and he doesn't answer prayer. The promises that he gives us aren't coming. So do we give up? No, we keep on trusting. We keep on faithing. Yahweh kept me from having children. Go to my slave girl. Perhaps I shall have children through her. And this was a common thing in those days. It's still common today to have a surrogate, to have children in your stead. And what they would do is, when it came time to deliver, the surrogate mother would have the child, and they would put the child on the womb of the mother of the in this case Sarah, and in a sense there would be a birthing process, symbolic birthing process, where Sarah would become the mother of the child. And this is a form, again, in those days, and today they do it medically and biologically in the laboratory. In those days, this was the way they would do it. I shall have children through her. That's not what Adonai said. Adonai said, Sarah, you are going to have a child. You and Abraham are going to have a son. Not through a surrogate, not through someone else, not through manipulation, not through human engineering, but by my power, by Adonai's word. But again, how many times have we failed? Abraham and Sarah were humans like us. They weren't supernatural people. They were like us. They had the same worries and doubts that we do. And in this case, like many of us, they failed to keep on trusting. What's interesting is that she lost faith. But Abram also was part of the problem. Watch how easily he says, and Abraham took Sarai's advice. That was fast. And he took her advice. Had he taken her advice before? I don't know. He took her advice. And what occurred is that there was problems. Now that Hagar became a mother, and she conceived and bore Ishmael, bore this little boy. And all of a sudden there was problems between Sarai and Hagar, and there was mistrust, there was contention there. And so all of a sudden she sends her away and she takes off. And she goes back to Egypt. Remember, Hagar was from Egypt. And so now she takes off back to Egypt. She runs away to Egypt. And on the way there, the angel of Yahweh found her by a spring in the desert, the spring on the road to Shur. And the road to Shur is between Cairo and what is Gaza today. And this is, by the way, the first time that the term the angel of Yahweh is found in Scripture. We're going to see the angel of Yahweh many times after this. This is the first time. Now remember, the word angel means messenger. So this is the messenger of Yahweh. Now, we've studied this before, and one of the things I would encourage you to study this again, but it is my proposition that the angel of Yahweh, the messenger of Yahweh, remember, he's a messenger. Now, the word angel, angelos, is the Greek form. Malach is the Hebrew form, a malach, a messenger. And it applies not just to spirit beings from Yahweh to humankind, to mankind, but any messenger who goes from King David to his men, that's an angel. In fact, in the book of Revelation, it talks about Yeshua writing letters to the 7 angels. The angel of Ephesus, the angel of Laodicea, the angel of Smyrna. And when people think of the angel, the 7 angels in Revelation, or many people think that these are spirit beings, that every congregation has a spirit being over it. That's been a misunderstanding for many, many years. But remember, the word angelos, angel, does not always mean a spirit being. Sometimes it is spirit being, like the angel Gabriel, the messenger Gabriel. He was a messenger angel. Michael is called an archangel, but there's only one archangel mentioned, and that's Michael, and that's Michael. And he is over all the other messengers. He is the head of the messenger spirit beings. But in the book of Revelation, the 7 angels are not spirit beings. The 7 angels are the 7 messengers to that congregation. In other words, the 7 pastors of the congregation. Now, we know that because Yeshua rebukes some of the messengers, and he commends others of the messengers. So you don't have one of these naughty angels over Laodicea and a good angel, spirit being angel over Ephesus. You don't have none of that. There's no. But the messengers, the human messengers, the pastors could be good or they could be bad. And that's why sometimes Yeshua disciplines the congregation, disciplines the messenger, the pastor of that congregation, because they're not doing what he's wanting them to do. or they're doing other things that they should not be doing. And so the messenger of Yahweh found her. Who is the messenger of Yahweh? Well, I'm going to propose to you here that the messenger of Yahweh is Yahweh himself, is the pre-incarnate Yeshua. And the pre-incarnate Yeshua, before he takes on flesh as a man here on earth, as the son of Elohim, as Yeshua, the pre-incarnate Yeshua appeared many times throughout Scripture as the messenger of Yahweh. Remember, he is the word of Yahweh. He's the word of Yahweh, and many times it says, and the word of Yahweh came to David, or the word of Yahweh came. And so the word, which is the pre-incarnate Yeshua, in the beginning was the word. The word was with Elohim, proston theon, face to face with Elohim, and the word was Elohim. Everything was created by him. Nothing was created without him. And the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as the only begotten of the Father. And so Yeshua, as the messenger of Yahweh, as the word of Yahweh. Remember, right in the beginning, Elohim, he spoke. He said, Yehi or, be light. And when Yahweh spoke, when the Father spoke, he spoke the word. And the word that be light became light. And that is through Yeshua. So Yeshua, in his pre-incarnate form, as the messenger of Yahweh, as the word, found her by the spring. Here she had taken off. She had run away. And he said, Hagar, slave girl of Sarai, where have you come from? And where are you going? I am running away from my mistress Sarai, she replied. The angel of Yahweh said to her, go back to your mistress and submit to her. We don't like words like that. We don't like phrases like that. So many times when we think something is right, this is what I need to do. What she thought is go back to Egypt, go back home, run away. We always want to run away. We always want to hide. But Adonai says to her, you know what? Go back and submit to Sarah. Well, Sarah was really oppressing her. Sarah was really getting on her case. Do I have to go back? And Adonai says, yes, go back. Now, he says to her, I shall make your descendants too numerous to be counted. So the Ishmaelites, what would become the Ishmaelites here, would now become many, too numerous to be counted. And in a sense, that's what we see today. Then the angel of Yahweh said to her, now you have conceived and will bear a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for Yahweh has heard. The word Ishmael means Yahweh has heard. Elohim has heard. It's a compound. It comes from Shema, to hear, to listen. Shema, Ishmael. Elohim has heard. By the way, that's my middle name. My middle name is Ishmael. That was my dad's name, and my grandfather was Seraphim, Sefer, the word, the Torah scroll, the Sefer. But that is a name that they gave me, so that's my middle name, Ishmael. For Yahweh has heard. Yahweh has heard your cries of distress. Remember, it doesn't matter where we're at. It doesn't matter who we are. She was in a bad place. And it wasn't even her fault. It was Sarah. It was Sarah's doing. She told Abraham, go to her, have a son for me by her. Sarai is the one that started the problem. And then when Hagar, she was happy having child. But now the contention grew. And Adonai hears our cries, our distress. Go back. She will have more distress, and another situation will happen in the future that we'll look at. But Adonai says, it is my will that you go back, and yet doesn't promise her problems that will come up, but they will. And then Adonai says, a wild donkey of a man he will be. So this Ishmael, Yahweh has heard, will be a wild donkey of a man. Now you know how donkeys are. You know how stubborn they are. You know how they are. And in a sense, this is what Ishmael and his descendants will be and have become. His hand against every man, and every man's hand against him. This will be a contentious man, a contentious descendants, and this has occurred throughout history. Living his life in defiance of all his kinsmen. And his kinsmen, remember, are the sons of Isaac and his sons, and the sons of Keturah, and his cousins, the Moabites and the Ammonites. There will be contention, and there is even today. Everybody wants to lead. Everybody wants to be part, this kingdom and that kingdom. And Hagar gave the name to Yahweh who had spoken to her. Now look at this. Wait a second. The angel of Yahweh found her. And it's the angel of Yahweh that speaks to her. It's the angel of Yahweh that says, go back. The angel of Yahweh, the messenger, Yahweh's messenger, says, do this. But now, after the prophetic word given to her, she realizes something. Someone is speaking to her, the angel of Yahweh. But watch what she says. Hagar gave a name to Yahweh, not to the angel of Yahweh, but to Yahweh who had spoken to her. So not only is this being called the messenger of Yahweh, but she recognizes that it is Yahweh, Yahweh himself, and she calls him El Roi. El Roi means Elohim who sees, by which she meant, did I not go on seeing here after him who sees me? I see the one who sees me. By the way, he is El Roi to every one of us because he sees us. He not only sees us on the outside, but he's the one that sees us on the inside. He is El Roi to Hagar. The messenger of Yahweh, who is Yahweh, sees deep inside of her. He sees her distress. He sees her situation. He tells her, go back. Go back and submit to Sarai. And I will bless you. You'll, through Ishmael, have many descendants. Yeah, he's going to be a wild donkey of a he's going to be against it. There's going to be contention for the rest of human history. Till the end, there's going to be contention among these people. But always remember, I see you. I see deep inside you, and I know. I know. Adonai knows what she's going through and what she'll go through in the future, by the way. This is why the well is called Lachai Roi, the well of the one who sees. Hagar bore Avram a son, and Avram gave the name Ishmael. Avram was 86 years old. The promises started when he was 75. Now he's 86. And it is Yeshua who is here by this well. By the way, it's interesting that Yeshua also is at a well with another woman, with a Samaritan woman. And it's interesting that there's two women, one Hagar and one unnamed Samaritan woman, that Yeshua is at a well and brings comfort to really both of them. And so most of the time we forget, and this is the beginning, and we'll talk even in end times and what's going on in Gaza today. By the way, the people of Gaza are descendants of the Ishmaelites and the Keturaites and the Moabites and the Ammonites, and mixed in with probably some Canaanites that back then. But they are not Philistines. They are not Palestinians. There's no such thing as Palestinians as a racial group. That name came about, given to the land by the Romans, by Hadrian in 135. After he destroyed Jerusalem, he took the name Israel, Galilee, Judea, and all those names, and Jerusalem, and called the land Syria Palestina. And it was under from Syria today to the south, was called Syria Palestina, to backstab the Jewish people with their ancient enemies, the Philistines. But the Philistines had already died out. After the time of David, the Philistines died out. There was no Philistines. There are no Philistines today. And any Philistines in the audience here today? No. There's no Philistines. There's no Palestinian. And by the way, Yeshua was not a Palestinian. I've heard many even pastors say Yeshua was no, he wasn't. Because it was not named Palestine until 135 AD or CE, however you use. In fact, that's why it really bothers me when some of these supposed scholars, map makers, did you know most of the New Testament maps that you could look at your Bible at the back and see if it says Palestine in the time of Christ. If your map says Palestine in the time of Christ, these people don't know what they're saying. There was no Palestine. It was Galilee in the time of Messiah. It was Judah in the time of Messiah. It was even Samaria in the time of Messiah. Yeshua goes to Samaria. Yes, it would have been Israel, but I digress here. Now, Genesis 17, we started on this last week, but I don't think we finished. Genesis 17:1. When Abraham was 99, now he's 99. Yahweh appeared to him and said, I am El Shaddai. Live in my presence, be perfect, and I shall grant a covenant between myself and you and make you very numerous. Remember, Adonai makes several covenants with Abraham in the form of promises. And these promises are still today, are still promises that Adonai is keeping and will keep forever. Now he says, Ani El Shaddai, I am El Shaddai. Whenever Elohim is used with another title, in this case Shaddai, Elohim is always contracted to El Shaddai, Immanuel, El Roy. It's always contracted. What does El Shaddai mean? Well, what's interesting is that the word Shaddai, means the breast. And he says, I am the one who brings you to my breast. I am the one who brings you to myself. Think of your father, your mother. When you fall down and you start crying. How many times has your father come and brought you to his breast and say, oh, hijito, don't cry, things are going to be all right. Or your mother, or someone that loves you. And in a sense, think of Adonai. Think of Yahweh here. Yahweh appeared. And he says, Ani El Shaddai, I am the one who brings you to myself, to brings you into my chest, my breast. I am the one that brings you. And in a sense, when you see that, when you feel that, how many times have you been in a situation, not just as a child, but many times as an adult, and you're crying, and a friend or your grandpa or someone brings you to themselves and say, everything is going to be all right. I am with you. Every one of us right now, he is your El Shaddai. He's your El Shaddai. You don't have to worry. You don't have to doubt. This was Haggad. This was an Egyptian slave girl. This is Abraham. This is Sarah. These are people that Adonai took. Don't worry, Haggad. I'm going to be with you. Don't worry, Abraham. Don't worry, Sarah. I'm going to be with you. I am El Shaddai. He is my El Shaddai. He is your El Shaddai. Live in my presence. Live in my presence. In his presence there is fullness of joy. Be perfect. Now the word perfect here doesn't mean be sinless. Doesn't mean be without fault. It just says be mature. The word perfect, we are told, be perfect as I am perfect, we are told. Now this is Yeshua, be perfect as I am perfect. Well, we can't be perfect without fault, no. But we could be mature. A perfect apple is a mature apple. But even mature, perfect apples sometimes have worms in them. And all you got to do is take the worm out. And Adonai makes us mature, and he took our worms out. El Shaddai. Genesis 17:1. Let's go to 18:1. And this is our parasha for today. Vayera. Again, Yahweh appeared as the angel of Yahweh to Haggad. Yahweh appeared to Avram as El Shaddai. Now again Yahweh appears to him, to Abraham, at the plains of Mamre, while he was sitting by the entrance of the tent during the hottest part of the day. And of course, in the ancient world, as they lived in tent, he was a tent dweller. He was a shepherd, and meant that they moved the tent around. He was around the area of Hebron, as we're going to see. And this was the hardest part of the day, which means it was after lunch. They already had their lunch. And this is what we call a siesta. He was having a siesta. And he was sitting by the entrance. And you know how it is sometimes when it's hot and you've had your lunch, you've eaten, and maybe today we go to the lanai or the patio, and we just sit there and we start falling asleep. We start dozing off, and we wake up, and una mosca's getting, so you have to chase the moscas away, the flies. And you're relaxing. And this is what was going on here. And he was sitting at the entrance on the hottest part of the day. He looked up, and there he saw 3 men standing near him. All of a sudden, he wakes up. You know how it is? You wake up and you're a little groggy and, te espantas. You kind of get a little scared there. 3 men. Now remember, in those days, you have in the middle of where you're at, your tent, where are these 3 men coming from? Scripture calls them anashim. Anashim are men. Just a regular word in Hebrew for men. Just regular men. He sees 3 men. And as he sees these 3 men, it says that he goes from the entrance of his tent and he bows down to the ground. He bows down. That is common Middle Eastern hospitality at the time. He bows to the ground. Remember, that's what worship is. The word worship, shachach, to bow down as an act of obedience. And then he says, my Adonai, my Adonai. 3 men, but he uses the word Adonai in the plural, but he's using it as always in the singular fashion today, which King James and English Bibles translate, my Lord. Not Yahweh. This is not the word Lord Yahweh. Notice that in your Bible it's not all caps. If it be all caps, Lord, all caps, that'd be Yahweh. But because it's not all caps, it's my Master, my Sovereign One, my Lord, in King James speak. And he says to them, I beg you, if I find favor with you, kindly do not pass your servant by. Again, Middle Eastern hospitality. When you travel in the Middle East, even today, people will open up their homes to you, and right away, just like in the olden days, I don't know why, but I always, when I read this, it always reminds me of my grandma's house. And anytime any visitors came by, everybody was taken to the kitchen. And you always went to the kitchen right away. And sometimes if they didn't have tortillas made, they start making tortillas and start, getting el chilito out and los frijolitos. And, they would always have food to eat. How many of you remember that anybody did that in their houses? And in a sense, this is what's going on here. He sees these three men. Now, these are three men. They're walking in the desert. Because they're walking in the desert, they're probably sweating. They probably have dust on them. Because again, these are not coming in as spirit beings with all their glory and with all the kavod of Yahweh. They are three men, anashim. And as they come, one of the things that we know here is that they're tired. And so what happens is Abraham says, let me fetch a little bread. Wash yourselves. A little water shall be brought. Wash your feet and, sit down under the tree. So you know that they look weary. They look tired. These are three men. And he says, let me fetch some bread, and you shall refresh yourselves before you go further. That is why you have come to your servant's direction. Do as you say. Abraham hastened to the tent to find Sarah. Hurry, he said, knead 3 bushels of flour and make loaves. The word loaves here would be the round tortilla types, unleavened bread. And he says, make 3 bushels. That's a lot of tortillas. That's a stack and a half. I think my cousin Molly's back here someplace. You remember those days, and my aunt, every time we'd go over there, and we'd even have Bible studies, and she was always making tortillas. Our Aunt Lila, remember? Always making those piles of, and that's what happens here. And running to the cattle, Abraham took a fine and tender calf and gave it to the servants who hurried to prepare it. Now, this takes time to get a calf, kill it, gut it, and take parts of the leg and put it under the fire, and make the bread, get freshened up, and they were probably relaxing, kind of, because they had been walking. They've been walking for, I don't know how long they've been walking at this point. And there he laid all before them, and they ate while they were standing, and taking cream, milk, and the calf he had prepared. So they got the calf, they got cream milk, of course the bread, and he puts it before them, and the 3 men eat. Now, what's important for us to know here, I know in today's rabbinic culture, you cannot have meat and milk, meat and dairy at the same time, because of a mistranslated verse that says you shall not boil a kid, a little goat, in its mother's milk, which was a pagan practice. Has nothing to do with not mixing meat and dairy, but because of that mistranslation, many people do not eat meat and dairy at the same time. Now, if you have stomach problems and you can't digest meat and dairy at the same time, don't eat meat and dairy at the same time. But that is not a law. It is kosher to eat meat and dairy at the same time, as long as the meat is food and it's kosher food. And so calf and milk, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not kosher, as many people say today. These three men, remember, anashim, these 3 men partake of the calf. They eat, they drink the milk, They eat the loaves, the bread, the tortilla, and there they were, while Abraham, was standing there kind of being a servant. Because, again, Middle Eastern hospitality, from all our studies, says that when you always have your guests eat and you are there like a waiter with a towel there, in a sense, if they need something more, or that you don't eat with them, they eat by themselves and you serve them. Where is your wife Sarai? They ask him. They ask, where's Sarah? You know. Now, Sarah, like all Middle Eastern women at the time, would prepare all that, but she would not come out with the guests. She would not be part of what was going on here. She would be in the back tending to the household affairs, tending to cooking and being part of what needed to be done. But one thing we do know is that she was a little nosy. Now, the reason we know that she was nosy is that, she was listening and looking, through the cortina, through the little thing. She was looking. You know how it is, ladies. And where is Sarah? And she was behind at the entrance of the tent behind him. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old, well on in years, and Sarah had ceased to have her monthly time. So Sarah laughed to herself, thinking, how is it that I am past the age of childbearing, and my husband is an old man, a viejo? He's a viejo. That's what it says there in the Hebrew. Is pleasure to come my way again? But Yahweh asked Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, am I really going to have a child now that I am old? Is anything too wonderful for Yahweh? Of course, the answer is no. Nothing is impossible. We are told, especially with Yeshua's miraculous birth. Is anything too wonderful, Yahweh? At the same time next year, I shall visit you again, and Sarah will have a son. I did not laugh, Sarah said, lying because she was afraid. But he replied, oh yes, you did laugh. Now here she was hiding, and she was listening. And she was listening to what one of the men, the head man, was saying to Abraham, you're going to have a son. And she's listening. All this she's doing to herself. In a sense, the men don't know that she's behind the curtain in the natural. And she's saying this to herself. And she laughs. Is it possible? And at the end she says, I did not laugh. Why is she laughing? I did not laugh. To herself. And it's almost like the head guy goes, oh yes, you did laugh. I busted you. I caught you. You're right there. You're behind the veil. You're just looking out right there. Oh yes, you did laughed. From there, the men set out and arrived within sight of Sodom. And so what happens is two of the men take off, and Abraham is left with one of them. We are told that no one can look upon the face of Elohim and live. You can't look at Elohim. You cannot look at the Father and live. Yet we are also told that Yahweh appeared to him. Well, wait a second. There's a contradiction. You cannot look upon the face of Yahweh. And yet Yahweh appears to him, and we find out that it is Yahweh who has been talking to him. These three men, one of them is Yahweh. And the other two are angels, spirit being angels, messengers. And they have a message for Lot in Sodom. But the head man here is Yahweh himself. Yet we cannot look upon him. And yet Hagar saw him. Who is the one that we cannot see? And who is the one that appeared and was seen to Hagar, to Abraham here, and in the future, to Isaac, to Yaakov? In fact, with Yaakov, he even fights. They get into a wrestling match. Think of that one. The Father, El Elyon, cannot be seen. The Most High Elohim. Yet the pre-incarnate Word, Yeshua, the Messiah, is the one who appeared to the patriarchs and others. And after the birth of Yeshua, the messenger of Yahweh never appears again. It is Yahweh who appears, and from Yahweh to Yahweh. In fact, we have a teaching that we see sometimes, we'll look at it again, where there's two Yahwehs. Yahweh does this by Yahweh. Oh, wait a second. You can't have that kind of language in English or Spanish or any other, only in Hebrew, and only by understanding the Elohut. What is the Elohut? Can we find that out, as we will see. The three men, two of the three men are angels. The third one is Yahweh. Now look at this. He appeared. He ate and drank. He spoke. They have a meeting. These three men that appeared, one of them is Yahweh. But look at this. Yahweh eats. Now, in our minds, in our thinking, since Yahweh is spirit, and this is the pre-incarnate Yeshua, and he appeared, and these two other men are angels, spirit beings. When they ate, what happened to their food? Where did they come from? They appeared right there. But they were tired and sweaty, and their feet were, he sees their feet, they're dirty, and he wants to wash he gives them water to wash. There's a meeting, a private meeting between Abraham and Yahweh about Sarah, about the birth that would become Isaac. And another meeting about Sodom and Gomorrah, about what's going to happen. And the other two go to Sodom. Genesis 18:19 is one of my special verses. I have a lot of special verses. And this is Haderech Yahweh. Derech is the word for a road, a way, a trail, a passage. Derech Yahweh means the way of Yahweh. And watch what Genesis 18:19 says. For I have singled him out. Remember, Lech-Lecha, leave your country, leave your people for a land that I will show you. And I will make you great. And I singled him out and commanded his sons. Now, think of this. At this point, he only has one son, Ishmael. He's going to have many sons. He's going to be the father of nations. I've commanded his sons and his household, his family, after him to keep the way of Yahweh. Chaderech Yahweh. Now what's interesting is this word Chaderech Yahweh is the name of which the book of Acts and the New Covenant scriptures talk about the Kehillah. The body of Messiah is called Chaderech. The first name of the body of Messiah, the Messianic community in Jerusalem, Judea, and was Chaderech, was the way of Yahweh. By what is upright and just, that Yahweh can carry out for Abraham what he has promised. And then the men turned away from there and went towards Sodom, while Abraham was still standing before Yahweh. It's interesting that the men turned away, went towards Sodom, while Abraham and Yahweh were talking. Remember this verse, John 8:56? Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, Yeshua says. And he saw it and was glad. The Jews therefore said to him, you are not 50 years old and you have seen Abraham? Yeshua said to them, before Abraham was born, I am. He uses the divine name. Eye asher eye. I am that I am. Before Abraham was born, I am. Therefore they picked up stones to throw at him, but Yeshua hid himself and went out of the temple. Yeshua and Abraham had met together. They fellowship. Think of it. They ate together. Yahweh ate in the tents of Abraham. They speak together in the tents of Abraham. And he rejoiced to see the day Abraham saw Yeshua as not only the angel of Yahweh, but as Yahweh himself. Let's stand. Father, I thank you for the opportunity that you have given us to study your word, to be part of what you are doing. Yeverechecha Yahweh va'ish merecha. Air Yahweh panav elecha vichunecha. Asa Yahweh panav elecha vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day.
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or torahunleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom y bienvenidos a Olive Tree y a la Torah Desatada. Les doy gracias a ustedes y a Adonai por su apoyo que nos han dado aquí. Y si quieren continuar a hacer una donación, pueden ir aquí en torahunleashed.org o en olivetreefellowship.com y ahí pueden dar una donación. Su apoyo, su ayuda es importante en estos días. Shalom, shalom.